Alright, so here we have the Blue-Red Dragons deck that I'm going to be playing with today. It's a list that I've put a lot of work into, and it's of my own design. I know other people are working on various dragon shells, but to be honest, dragons in general right now aren't seeing a ton of play, especially the red ones. We see Esper dragons, but Thunderbreak region is not getting a lot of love right now, and I don't really see why that's the case, but let's go over the deck and we'll see why the deck has so many sweet interactions. And it's really a classic blue-red deck because you can tempo out your opponent or you can win with card advantage. So the mana is quite consistent. There are a bunch of basics, and then we have, of course, our 4 Shivan Reefs, and the 4 Wandering Fumaroles are really important. One of the best man lands in Standard right now. And if you're going to play a 2-color deck, I recommend having access to a man land, and this is one of the best ones. And 1 copy of Haven of the Spirit Dragon in the main, and you'll see more of those in the sideboard in a minute. But the card does a lot, and we can afford to play it because we're straight 2 colors. We're playing a variety of burn spells here. So we've got our Fiery Impulses for our 1 mana play if we want to get rid of a 1-drop in the human deck, or if we're on the draw, getting rid of a Dustwatch Recruiter, or even later in the game, we can turn on Spell Mastery quite easily, and it just kills Sylvan Advocates, kills a bunch of creatures. It's pretty good, but we've also got a lot of other burn spells we want to be playing, so there's only 2 copies. We're playing 4 Draconic Roar because it's just the best burn spell in Standard, assuming that you have dragons in your deck. So it works great with Thunderbreak Regent. Just 2 mana to deal 3 and 3 damage to your opponent's face. You can redirect that damage to Planeswalkers. Just a great utility card. And the other 2 mana burn spell, which sometimes is not 2 mana, it can be more, but it's Avacyn's Judgment, a card that is a new card and hasn't been seeing a ton of play. You can just use it on turn 2 as like a Fork Bolt effect, and it's fine. Or if you have Jace in play, you can loot and then discard it and Madness it out, and that is always sweet, and it takes your opponent completely by surprise. So I've been pretty happy with it. Sometimes you'll even get a 2-for-1 if your opponent plays 2 1-toughness creatures. Happens a reasonable amount, so I like 2. I would recommend more than 2, as we only really have 4 ways to Madness it in the Jaces. Silumgar's Scorn is the other primary reason why we want to be Dragons focused. And the Draconic Roar and the Silumgar's Scorn are the best synergistic dragon cards that are available in Standard. Silumgar's Scorn is the best counterspell in Standard, assuming you can turn it on. And counterspells seem to be coming back a little bit. They're quite good if your opponent has a lot of instant speed stuff, Collected Companies or Avacyns or whatever. They expect they'll be able to play them during your turn, no problem, and then you just Silumgar Scorn it and completely shift the game. So 4 copies of Jace. I know it's an expensive card, but it's just the best 2-drop here that blue and red has access to. It's not insane in the deck, but it's pretty good. We've got some burn spells we can flash back, and just having a looter is nice. Talking about the 3 mana creatures a little bit, these creatures don't see a lot of play, especially Sin Prodder. This one may raise a few eyebrows, but honestly the card's pretty good right now. Just a 3 mana 3/2 Menace is already a reasonable size for 3 mana, and being able to reveal a creature, reveal a spell, and then redirect that damage to your opponent is quite important, or just being able to take that spell into your hand is often even better. So, for instance, against a deck with Planeswalkers, you play a Sin Prodder on 3, and you reveal a Thunderbreak Regent on turn 4, all of a sudden your opponent has to either take the 4 damage, which you can redirect to, say, a Gideon or a Nissa, or you get the Thunderbreak into your hand. Either way, you're winning. So Simprotter has its moments where it's just great. Eldrazi Sky Spawner is the other 3-drop here, and the card has just been proven to be a pretty solid 3-drop in general. We have some cards that we can accelerate into. It's a flyer. The spawn often proves to be quite relevant, so I like having the 3 main deck and then the 1 more in the sideboard. And we've got a couple exquisite firecrafts, more burn spells. We can also use those to go after planeswalkers, Dragonlord Ojutai, or what have you. Plus, it's an unconditional way to kill your opponent later in the game once you have Spell Mastery turned on and your opponent's at less than 4, which happens a reasonable amount. And then a couple Scattered to the Winds as just basically the 5th and 6th counter spells, and sometimes you'll be able to awaken it, which is nice. 4 copies of Thunderbreak Regent, that's self-explanatory. It's the best dragon we have access to, and we want to be playing a critical amount of dragons to make our Slumguard Scorn and Draconic Roar good. So Thunderbreak is the best one. Icefall Regent is also pretty good. These cards are a lot better now that removal is on the decline. Sometimes you can just stick an Icefall Regent and your opponent has literally no cards in their deck to interact with it. And that's pretty fun as just a 5-mana 4/3 and stopping their creature. Also, when the opponent does want to use a removal spell on Icefall Regent, it's going to cost them. It costs them some mana, so it's a reasonable exchange even though we're paying 5 mana for our dragon. And then we have a couple 6-mana big spells here. 1 Dragonlord's Prerogative and 1 Chandra Flamecaller. I like kind of the 1-in-1 split. It's been pretty solid for me. Chandra's just a good card, but sometimes you'll be faced with the situation of whether you want to kill your own creatures with it. So there's just 1 copy and then 1 Dragonlord's Prerogative. So let's look at the sideboard a little bit. We have this Reality Smasher plan. That should be the first card that draws some attention. The reason is the control matchup, honestly, game 1 is not that good. So we want to have a bunch of ways of producing colorless, and there are Havens. So Haven's a great card versus control because it allows you to reuse those Thunderbreak Regents and Icefall Regents. Plus, it helps us cast Reality Smasher. And Reality Smasher's good against control, it's good against ramp. It's just a great way to pressure your opponent, and it's extremely hard to deal with at the moment. There's very few cards that deal with it. Languish, Grasp of Darkness, Ultimate Price, you name it, it's not going to kill a Reality Smasher. And even if you can kill it, you still have to discard a card. So this card has been exceptional for me in a lot of matchups, and that's why there's 4 copies on the board, 3 copies of Haven of the Spirit Dragon, and 1 Eldrazi Sky Spawner to make sure you are able to have the colorless sources after board to be able to play this Reality Smashers in the board. And there's another copy of Dragonlord's Prerogative, which is very nice in the control matchup as well. And then we've got Negate as just an all-purpose card. There's so many decks in Standard that just have a bunch of non-creature spells. They could be control decks. They could also be mid-range decks like green-white, and you just have these negates that are very hard to play around and are additional counterspells. And last but not least, we have the 3 copies of Rending Volley, which come in a lot more than you would think. They can come in against humans, they can come in against Dragonlord Ojutai decks, they can come in a variety of spots, and are a lot better than they would look. And the deck has been performing exceptionally so far in testing, and I look forward to the games.